Part 1. The Shadow of War. The countryside was hushed that autumn morning when the Marquess of Ashbourne returned to England. His carriage rolled through mist-laden fields, wheels creaking, horses snorting, while the wind carried the faint scent of rain and memory. Julian Harrow sat back against the worn leather seat, his right hand resting on the head of his cane. A faint scar ran from his temple to his jaw, a pale reminder of the field at Salamanca, where the man beside him had not lived to see the dawn. He had been hailed once as the most promising of men, a future duke, a soldier of courage, and a gentleman whose word was honour itself. But the years had hollowed him. He had returned not to applause but to silence, not to a waiting bride but to solitude. They still whispered her name in society. Lady Catherine Riverton, the beauty who had broken his heart for a richer, duller man. The betrayal had cut deeper than the musket ball that tore his leg. So when the lawyers asked if he intended to marry, he gave his answer coldly. No. The title may end with me. I'll not risk my peace again for a woman's smile. And thus he buried himself at Ashbourne Hall, a vast, echoing house where ivy climbed the walls and servants spoke in lowered tones. Part 2. The Invitation. It was his old friend, the Earl of Densmore, who drew him out of his self-imposed exile. A note arrived one April morning, written in the Earl's broad, cheerful hand. Ashbourne, my dear fellow, you must come down to Densmore Park. We have a small gathering planned, a hunt, a little music, and, if you must be tempted, the best claret in the county. I insist upon it. Julian might have refused, but perhaps it was the long loneliness that made him reconsider. He had fought battles in mud and smoke. Surely he could endure a country visit. And so, a fortnight later, his carriage rattled up the drive to Densmore Park, a stately house of honey-coloured stone surrounded by manicured gardens and early spring roses. The Earl, broad-shouldered and jovial, greeted him with both hands. "Julian, by heaven, it's good to see you. My wife will be delighted." Lady Densmore was indeed delighted, in a manner that set his teeth on edge. She was all satin and simper, and her daughter Clarissa hovered nearby, fluttering lashes and fan alike. The Marquess inclined his head, murmured civil greetings, and endured a luncheon of endless chatter. When at last the company spilled into the gardens, he sought refuge among the rose terraces. Part 3. The Encounter in the Rose Garden. He had not walked far when the murmur of voices drew his attention, then a woman's cry. Rounding a marble fountain, he found Lord Halford, red-faced with drink, grasping the wrist of a young woman whose bonnet had fallen to the gravel. "Come now, my sweet," Halford drawled. "You'll not pretend innocence when I've seen the way you look at me." The young woman struggled. "Let me go, my lord." At once Ashburn's voice sliced through the air. "Unhand the lady, Halford." Halford wheeled about, smirking, and froze. The Marquess's eyes, grey as tempered steel, fixed on him with a soldier's deadly calm. "Ah, Ashbourne, we were merely—" "You were making a fool of yourself," came the curt reply. "Go, before I remind you how cowards were treated in Spain." Halford blanched, stammered a bow, and stumbled away. Julian turned to the woman. She was breathless, cheeks flushed, but her voice was steady. "Thank you, my lord." "I should not have wandered alone." "It seems the garden is more dangerous than the battlefield," he said dryly. "Do you serve in the household?" Her brow furrowed slightly. "I beg your pardon?" "I assumed you were the governess." She shook her head, faint amusement flickering in her eyes. "No, my lord. I am quite of the family." He inclined his head, murmured another apology, and left, never learning her name. But he would not forget her. Part 4. The Forgotten Daughter. That evening introductions were made. The Earl beamed with pride as he presented his household. My wife, of course, and my younger stepdaughter, Miss Clarissa, and my elder child, Lady Eleanor Densmore. Julian's gaze settled on the quiet figure in pale blue muslin, the very woman from the garden. She dipped a graceful curtsy, her eyes calm and unreadable. Lady Eleanor prefers her solitude, the Earl added with a sigh. Books, music, the company of trees, not the season's latest fashions. Lady Densmore tittered. She is hopelessly rustic, my lord. We despair of her ever finding a husband. Julian's lips twitched, not in amusement, but irritation. That such dignity should be mocked by her own kin struck him keenly. He caught Eleanor's faint, wry smile and understood. She had long grown accustomed to neglect. Part 5. A Friendship Unlooked For. Over the following days, their paths crossed often. In the garden, he found her reading beneath a cedar tree, in the library, sketching in the margin of a worn volume. At first, their conversation was polite, a word about the weather, the roses, or a line of poetry. But soon formality faded. One afternoon she asked softly, "Is it true you were at Salamanca?" "It is," he replied. "I left a part of myself there." "And yet you returned?" "Barely." She smiled faintly. "Then you are braver than most." He looked at her then, really looked, and realized how wrong he had been to think her plain. Her beauty was of the quiet kind that deepened the longer one gazed. Day by day, the silence within him began to soften. Part 6. Whispers and Plots. Lady Densmore was not blind, nor was her daughter. She cornered Clarissa one morning, voice sharp as perfume. "You must secure him, do you hear? The Marquess is your future." "But Mamma, he hardly notices me." "Then make him." As for Eleanor, she shall be sent away if need be. They began their work. Rumours fluttered through the household like dark moths, that Eleanor had trapped the Marquess with calculated sweetness, that she had written him letters of affection. Lord Percival Harrow, the Marquess's cousin and heir-in-waiting, joined the game with pleasure. "She wants your fortune, Julian," he murmured over brandy. "Mark my words, the Densmores are desperate for a title." Old wounds reopened. The memory of Lady Catherine returned like a ghost. And so, when next Eleanor smiled and asked when he might walk with her again, he hesitated and withdrew. Part 7. The Breaking Point. A week later, a ball was held at Densmore Park. Eleanor, though reluctant, attended, her stepmother insisting on appearances. She wore a gown of ivory muslin, simple but graceful, yet no one asked her to dance. From across the room she saw the Marquess, aloof, grave, and distant. He inclined his head but did not approach. Whispers rippled behind her fan. She pursued him shamelessly. He's finally seen her true colours. The cruelty was more than she could bear. At last she fled the ballroom, tears stinging her eyes. Part 8. The Storm. That night, thunder rolled across the hills. Julian sat sleepless by the fire, guilt gnawing at him. Something within whispered that he had judged unjustly. At dawn, a messenger arrived. Eleanor had left the house, accused of impropriety, disowned, vanished into the storm. Without another thought, he seized his cloak, mounted his horse, and rode into the rain. He found her by the ruined chapel, drenched, clutching a small satchel. "Eleanor!" She turned, startled. "My lord, why have you come?" "Because I was a fool," he said. "Because I cannot let you go." "You believed them," she whispered. "I did, and I was wrong." For a long moment they stood, rain coursing between them. Then, wordlessly, he wrapped his cloak around her shoulders and led her home. Part 9. Ashbourne. Awakened at Ashbourne Hall, Eleanor found warmth and rest. She read to him by the hearth, tended the garden, and restored a gentleness long absent from those silent halls. One morning, as she prepared to leave, he stopped her on the staircase. "Eleanor, must you go?" "I have no right to stay." He stepped closer, voice unsteady. "You have every right, if you'll have me." She looked up, astonished. "You cannot mean—" "I can, and I do. You brought life back to a house long dead. Stay, as its mistress." Her answer was a whisper through tears. "Yes." Part 10. The Reckoning. Their peace was soon disturbed. Percival arrived in fury, demanding explanation. Lady Densmore followed, feigning maternal outrage. "You dare marry that girl?" she cried. Julian faced them calmly. "I dare choose my own happiness." Percival sneered. "You'll regret this. The title deserves better. The title," he replied coolly, "has endured worse." He took Eleanor's hand. "My word is given. She is my future Marchioness." The argument ended with slamming doors and silence, but within that silence lay freedom. Part 11. The Wedding. Spring came with lilacs and white roses. The village church bloomed with garlands, and the pews overflowed with well-wishers. Eleanor walked down the aisle in a gown of soft ivory. The Earl, remorseful and grey, gave her hand away with trembling fingers. When Julian saw her approach, sunlight through stained glass gilding her hair, his heart ached with a joy he had never known. Their vows were simple. "For all the days granted us," he said. "For all the seasons yet to bloom," she answered. The bells pealed, echoing across the valley, not for war, not for mourning, but for love reborn. The garden in bloom. Years passed. Ashbourne Hall thrived once more. Children's laughter echoed in corridors once hushed. Roses clambered over the terrace walls, and the Marquess, silver now at the temples, walked arm in arm with his wife through the garden where their story began. He paused beside the old fountain. "Do you remember?" Eleanor smiled. "How could I forget? You rescued me," he chuckled softly. "No, my love, you rescued me." And so ended the tale of a soldier who had sworn never to love again, until love, patient and steadfast, found him amidst the ruins of his heart and made him whole. The end. If you've enjoyed this story of love, redemption, and quiet courage, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, so you'll be the first to hear our next Regency romance on the Regency Gazette channel. Thank you for listening.